In this video, I am going to be taking you through two different methods of fingerboard training. One is minimal edge training, so training on quite small edges and something that's quite in vogue at the moment and a lot of people are talking about. And then the second is one that people don't talk quite as much about, and this is termed as edge reduction training. And I'm going to be running through both of those and how you might use those in your own training sessions. Now, first off is that both these methods of training are often associated with the elite. You see people hanging out on really small edges, 6mm, there's even some 4mm edges out there. People doing one-armers, really heavy, hard-weighted hangs. And I think often the question is this relevant to me as an intermediate climber and someone that may have only fingerboarded for a year or 2 years? Can I still use this method? And then likewise, is this same kind of method used by the elite where they're doing hangs that may start at 10mm and they're dropping down to 8mm, then down to 6mm, and they're reducing that edge size, so that edge reduction method. Is that still applicable to me as an intermediate climber or a non-pro climber? And what I'm going to do is take you through how you use both of those methods, but set them for your level so that you can still have those tools and use them to progress in your training. Now, first point to make is whether this could be useful for you. Is it appropriate? And I think the number one thing with this is if I can show you the methods for how we adjust the intensity and the difficulty of these exercises, and you have a level of conditioning which is appropriate for it, then yes, it has a good chance that it is applicable for you. But if you can't achieve some of the minimal standards, or you've only just started fingerboard training, or you're a really beginner climber and you've only been climbing for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and a much shorter time scale, I think this is appropriate to leave this a little bit further down the line and establish some kind of fingerboarding background, a foundation of 6 months, a year, and really build up a little bit more. So let's look at minimal edge training first. Now, I've got the triple board behind me, and on this we have our 10mm edge. And I think this is a great place to start for most people on minimal edge training. And why the 10mm edge is really, really important in terms of a standard benchmark for minimal edge is it's about a half pad for most people. So it's lining up halfway across the pad on your end of the fingers. So you're not getting a full support through that joint. And that's very much in that territory of minimal edge training. And for a lot of climbers, when they first start hanging on an edge like this, they can barely hang 1, 2, 3 seconds, and it all feels a bit too hard for them to do. And if you can only hang a few seconds, it probably is too hard. So what we're going to do is work out a way to adjust the difficulty so that you can complete this sort of training. Right, let's start first of all with the kit that you're going to be using for some minimal edge training. Number one is a harness so that we can take some weight off of our body. And I've got a pulley set up here with rope, pulley, and weight on the other side so that I can adjust the difficulty with which I'm hanging on this minimal edge down from body weight to sub body weight. And the important thing on this is that we want to try and get into the zone where we can actually hang a hold for around 10 seconds, and this feels maximum. We don't want to be doing hangs where we're only hanging for 2 or 3 seconds and failing. So it's really important on this particular style of training, especially when you first introduced to it, to stay away from failure. Stay inside of your relative comfort zone so that we're succeeding on all hangs and getting to that target hang time zone. Next thing to take into account with this style of training is skin condition. And I think it's really important that you don't have any pain in terms of the skin condition tied from any other sessions, so you're not carrying that discomfort. Secondly, is that this form of training is not something to be completed all year long in our experience. This is something to be cycled in and out of maximal hang work on heavier, larger sized edges. So don't just exclusively do this all year long, expecting results and also not expecting some kind of overuse injury. Okay, so first step with our minimal edge training is we want to find out our 10-second max hang. And I've got a harness on to be able to do this, so I'm going to take some weight off of my body weight with a rope and pulley setup. And this is just like any kind of maximal single arm hang work or two arm hang work. It just takes a little bit of time and play to work out your maximum. So I'm going to try a hang first off on this 10mm edge with a 5 kilo assistance. And I'm going to see whether I can complete a full 10-second hang with 5 kilos taken off body weight. Okay, and we'll go 3, 2, go. So I'm aiming for that stopwatch to hit 16 because that's 10 seconds. 2, 1, time. Okay, so completed my 10-second hang there. Relatively comfortably. It was reasonably hard, but I certainly wasn't at failure. So this is not quite the right intensity for this session. So what I would do from here is I would now make the intensity a little bit harder. So I might go for my next hang and take all that weight off. So try this one at body weight because I'm trying to find that max 10-second hang. So rest around 2 or 3 minutes and then repeat and try that again. Okay, so I'm going to try that hang again now at body weight. So a little bit higher intensity and see how it's feeling compared to that 10-second hang. So start our stopwatch going, little countdown, I'll go on 5 and go. Okay, so that felt, just start to feel my hands or my fingers opening up on that one there. So I was moving from that half crimp grip position that I'd selected and I was just starting to open out. So for today, I'm gonna say that I found my max hang intensity for 10 seconds at body weight. So now I'm gonna be doing my minimal edge training session on my 10mm edge. Now, as I mentioned earlier, is I wanna stay away from failure on this session. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna do my sets and my reps at a 7-second hang, but at my 100% intensity. So my 100% intensity was at body weight, but I'm gonna be dropping it down to 7 seconds of duration. If you're doing this testing and you've taken body weight off for 5 kilos, and that was your 10-second hang, you would then complete your minimal edge training with that body weight taken off. So it's really important on this that we're staying away from the failure element of the hangs on minimal edge, and also that you're very comfortable and feel confident that you can do this with weight taken off. It's not just because weight's taken off, this won't work for you and doesn't apply if you're not some, pro beast that's hanging with 50 kilos off you. This method will still work. You just got to get the intensity right for it. So with this session here I'm going to be doing 7 seconds and I'm going to be then taking a 3-minute rest and I'm going to be repeating that between 6 to 8 times in total in that session. And I'm going to be careful to stay away from failure. Okay, so we'll be going for a 7-second hang. And go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. So didn't feel anywhere near to failure. It's hard, but I felt comfortable. It feels uncomfortable in the way that it's a small edge and I have not done a small edge training cycle, so it's pushing me and I'm going to see some adaptation to that small edge work, but I'm very definitely staying away from failure. I'm going to take 3 minutes rest now, recover, and I want to come back to that next hang really fresh again. One thing to note is that if my skin condition degrades during the session and I start to get sore skin, I will typically end that session. It's just not very motivating or enjoyable to do a lot of minimal edge training with really sore skin. And one of the things that we really find beneficial in terms of training is that you want to find for high motivation level during those sessions, because the consistency of motivation gets a lot more out of those sessions. So 3 minutes of rest, and then I'm going to go again on that hang. And go. So again, keeping that shoulder position nice and engaged. Off. Square shoulder position in that consistent forefinger grip all the way through, not opening up, not going to failure, and then I'm repeating that 6 to 8 sets in total. This is not a repeater style exercise where you're going to failure, getting pumped and suffering high levels of fatigue. One word of caution that I would like to point out on terms of the minimal edge training, which I think is something to be aware of, is that for certain edge sizes, and depending also on the morphology, so the size and the shape of your fingers, is that if you're going to do any minimal edge training in a drag position, be really careful on certain edge sizes will sit right into the kind of like the nook of the joint on your fingers, and this can become really uncomfortable, and I think this is a potential here to aggravate the finger joints on certain edge sizes. So be really careful on that, on the drag position in particular. If you find that, let's say that occurs for you on a 12mm edge, then either move to a much more rounded edge so you don't have that effect, or move to a half crimp grip position so you're in 90 degrees and you're not hanging right on the joint in that position. So I think that's one thing to watch out for on this. Next up, let's talk about edge reduction training. Now, we've seen lots of elite level climbers, professional climbers on social media use these methods where they're dropping the edge size down smaller and smaller, down to those 6mm edge sizes, 8mm edge sizes, and often doing one arm work on that as well. And I think a lot of people wonder whether this is possible and applicable to the intermediate level fingerboarders or intermediate level climbers. And I'm very much of the opinion that this is also a method that can be used with this group of climbers. It's just a case of making sure that it's appropriate and you adapt the methods so that it's useful for you and you're going to see the correct adaptations and not increase your injury risk. Now, first off is that you want to be able to maintain the right body positions to be able to do this stuff. So typically, if you go on an edge, which is either single arm or two arm, and it's too small for you, you may see really poor form on that, and we don't want that. So we need to be able to check that you can maintain good quality form, especially around body position, the shoulders, and also that consistent grip position all the way through your hangs. Next up, you need a method for reducing the edge size down to something which is just in incremental steps. And a lot of fingerboards out there, I think, have quite small edges, and then they often have something really big and flat, but there's very often something that isn't in the middle of this. And so what I see a lot of people use effectively is something that's along the lines of like a blocker and a consistent sized piece of card. I've seen people use it with batteries. These are actually really basic homemade fingerboard files. And as long as they are a standardized size and they can fit on your fingerboard edge and you can slowly reduce that over time, this is a really good little tool to have in this. So these are probably 3mm increments, and you can stack these up and slowly decrease the edge on your biggest size on your fingerboard. I think for a lot of people this isn't applicable when they're down at that very elite level and you've already can buy products that are 10mm, 8mm, but for the intermediate boulderers or sport climbers, you might want to reduce from 30 or 40mm and slowly take those sizes down, especially with what I'm going to show you today, which is some single arm hang work, because I know a lot of people really struggle with maintaining form and being able to progress their single arm hang work because they can hang on a really big jug, no problem at all, and they can't get close to touching a single joint edge. And how do you progress between the two of those? So I'm going to show you a bit of a method today and a training cycle that you can do with that. So I've got my blockers, I've got my big flat 45mm edge on the triple board. You'll notice with this one that it's flat on the top, so it's really easy to stack any of these blockers on them, and they'll sit really comfortably on the top and they won't fall off, and you can change the sizes on those. And then next up, I've got my pulley system so that I can take some weight off. So first off is I want to check my body position, and then I can actually maintain correct form for these single arm hangs before I even start. And that is that I'm going to take my largest size edge, big flat 45mm edge. I'm going to have my assistance here. This is really good for stopping the rotation. I haven't got a great deal of weight on it, so I'm not getting a lot of assistance out of it, but it stops my body turning outwards or turning inwards, and I want to stay a nice square position on the board. And I'm just going to check that I can engage on that shoulder and stay square on, rather than hanging right down on it and not engaging that shoulder. Nice position. Yeah, very happy with that. And that means that I'm now gonna start this session. So if I couldn't get that position of having my shoulder retracted back, nice square on position on the fingerboard, I think I probably wouldn't be appropriate for this single arm work. But in this case, I'm happy. So my 45mm edge, very comfortable, not a problem at all. If I get all my blockers on there, stick those on the back, and I'm now effectively down to maybe a 20mm edge. I hang on these, and this is the kind of size of edge that a lot of people want to be able to do their single arm work on, and it's kind of like a goal and something that people would really like to achieve with their climbing. But if I tried that on there, and I hang on it, now I'm failing within 2 seconds or so. So this is not appropriate for me to be able to do that single arm hang work. And I'm gonna really struggle if I keep trying to do my fingerboarding at this kind of intensity where I'm just failing almost straight away. I can't get any time under tension, I can't maintain form, and it's really not that very motivating to constantly fail. So what I need to do is I need to be able to create a systematic way of slowly building up towards that 20mm, 25mm edge hang single arm. Okay, so let's start off with a single blocker. So I'm going to reduce this edge size down from around 45mm to perhaps 41mm. And I'm going to be using my max hang protocol of a 7-second hang, then followed by a really good rest period. So blocker on, hand on flat edge, assistance, maintaining that nice shoulder position on my hang, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. That felt relatively intense, but not quite the right intensity for a max hang session. I was down at a relatively low perceived level of effort that might have only been down at sort of 5 out of 10, and we're not really aiming that for our max hang session. So we need to push that margin of comfort a little bit more. So in this case, if I'm trying to progress from that 45mm all the way through to that 20 or 25mm, I think I need to add a little bit more in terms of kind of blocker size. So I might add another blocker and try this again in my session, really trying to kind of adjust for and find the level of intensity that's just right. Again, always trying to maintain that nice position in terms of form, grip, and shoulder on that hang. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that started to feel really good. I was shaking a little bit, had a little bit of quiver, more down at like an 8 or 9 out of 10. And once I start to build up in terms of reps on that, this is gonna be just about the right kind of intensity. I was getting just a little bit of creep on the hold as well. So I was working pretty hard on that. I think if I put another spacer in that again, then I'll fail much earlier on the sets, and I might fail down at 3, 4, 5 seconds, and that wouldn't be appropriate for a max hang session, and I wouldn't get enough time under tension with that exercise. So with this, I've now found the right intensity. I would repeat that with my right arm and my left arm. Don't forget that if you have differences in strength between left and right arm, you're going to want to adjust the depth of that blocker and make it always relative to the strength that you have in that arm. And then lastly is that you want to find a progression of training cycles that work for this style of training, this edge reduction training. And I'm going to draw on this whiteboard what I think is a good standardized or generic way of training for this minimal edge reduction over a period of 4-week cycles. If I take week 1 to week 4, is that in week 1, I'm going to work on my 40mm hang. And I might do that times 2 or times 3 during that week. Again, on week 2, I'm going to repeat that same hang again and do that times 2 or 3 during the week. So I may start to feel some kind of comfort during that second week where I start to adapt to it and I feel more comfortable on it. On week 3, which is going to be my last hard week during this cycle, so I'm going to work hard in weeks 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to rest in week 4 or have a relative deload week, is in week 3, I'm going to reduce that edge size down to 37mm, so I'm going to add another blocker into that. But this time, is I'm going to drop down to only 2 times per week, and I'm going to drop my time under tension to 5 seconds on those hangs. So I'm going to move down from 7 seconds to 5 seconds, but I want my body to adapt to that higher intensity, but I'm giving it a little bit of room to kind of maneuver so that I can complete those 5-second hangs at that new intensity. The body's going to adapt to that. And then finally, in week 4, in that deload week, is I'm going to repeat that same higher intensity again, but I'm going to drop that down to just once in that week, and again repeating that slightly shorter tension of 5 seconds in that deload week. What I should note that is in that deload week there in week 4 is I'm going to really be reducing any of my training that I'm doing in that week. So I just want to make a note that this last deload week in week 4, although there is some hang training in this, is much reduced, and it's also combined with a reduction in all of your other training. Then when I come back round to repeating this cycle and I go into the second block, so weeks 5, 6, 7, 8, I will then do that with this new depth at 37 and go back to that 7-second hang cycle. And that's the way in which we progress through these hang cycles, making slow incremental improvements and using the kind of methods and tools that the elite and the professionals will use with this minimal edge training. So to summarize, with these 2 forms of training, both our minimal edge training and edge reduction training, is that you want to make sure that form is really good on these. This is really important for any of you in that intermediate phase of your fingerboard training or climbing. And then secondly as well is that it's not the answer to finger strength training. You want to cycle these in. Even if you have really good response from this for, let's say, a 12-week cycle, don't then extend that out into a 52-week cycle. It's one tool, it's one part of your training. So keep changing up those cycles and move through them as you go through your training years. Lastly, I'm going to put a link in the description below to our new triple fingerboard product. And at the moment, we've actually got an offer on this in our 365 premium group, where you can have some additional campus rungs into that as a bundle deal. I'll put all the links below. Click to like and subscribe, and we will see you again soon.